Welcome to Classic Take, episode 23. We will discuss the role of Eliyahu Hanavi, Elijah the prophet, in the future redemption. In previous episodes, we have discussed different descriptions that our sages, our prophets, speak about the coming of Moshiach. Whether in episode 21, we spoke about the war of Gog and Magog. In episode 22, Moshiach ben Yosef. Perhaps the most famous person that accompanies the coming of Moshiach is Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi. And this is, many midrashim. I mean, Eliyahu Hanavi, the topic of Elijah the prophet, is a huge topic in Jewish tradition, in Jewish stories, in Jewish mysticism. And obviously, this goes well beyond the scope of the episode today. But Eliyahu Hanavi has a very important role in the coming redemption as well. And it's specified in the verses at the end of Malachi. Right at the end is the famous verse that says, Hini anoichi shelech lachem es Eliyahu Hanavi. Behold, I am sending to you Elijah the prophet. Lifnei bo yom Hashem agadav ha'neir, before the great and awesome day of Hashem, which refers to the coming of Moshiach, or the war of Gog and Magog, as we discussed in episode 21. What is he going to do? The verse continues, V'heishiv leiv aves al bonim, v'leiv bonim al avosam. He will return the hearts of fathers to their sons, and the hearts of sons to their fathers. And the verse finishes off on a little bit of a scary note. He says, otherwise, I might come, v'keisias, and I will strike the earth, chedem, I'll destroy the world. Basically, that if you don't, Eliyahu Hanavi is necessary to come to make people return to good faith, because otherwise, things might not end up being so good. Okay, well, let's focus on the positive over here. There's no point in focusing on the scary part. We'll focus on the positive. What is the role of Eliyahu Hanavi? Why is he coming, and what is so many great things that will happen when Moshiach comes? And the greatest person of all is Moshiach himself. So why do you need Eliyahu Hanavi? And what will be his role? So a lot of the discussion regarding Eliyahu Hanavi really is intertwined with the whole understanding of the persona, of the personality, and what Eliyahu Hanavi embodies. Right? We know that Eliyahu Hanavi, according to tradition, there's different opinions in this, but according to tradition, he did not die a physical death. He went up to heaven. And as it's understood mystically, Kabbalistically, that his body became so pure and refined that he didn't die a natural death. He went up with his body to heaven. What exactly that means, obviously, is completely beyond the scope of current discussion. It's discussed in works of Kabbalah, discuss that a lot, and the works of Chassidus discuss it a lot. But we'll discuss it briefly, what's relevant to the topic at hand. Eliyahu Hanavi traditionally is someone who still has a relationship with this world, which means that throughout history, it's documented. There's stories that are transmitted that well known, how Eliyahu Hanavi appeared to certain righteous sages, and this was something that continued throughout the generations. Many stories of different salvations that come about that are attributed to Eliyahu Hanavi coming and disappearing. He comes, even though he went up to heaven, he still comes down to this world, and he has a role, which is explained why he is the one that was picked to have this role, but he has this role that he is Hashem's messenger to do different things in this world. And he will have a very important role when Moshiach comes as well. And we'll speak about especially his role that is related to the coming of Moshiach. So, in very simple terms, the purpose of Eliyahu Hanavi's coming is to prepare the Jewish people for the coming of Moshiach. Moshiach just comes on the scene. All of a sudden, world events start happening, and it could be, these world events will be changing, whether it's Gog and Magog, just arrival of Moshiach. You have to be ready. You have to prepare yourself. You have to know what's coming and know how to prepare yourself for what's happening. So Eliyahu Hanavi was the one that was designated by Hashem, that at the end times, he will be the one to notify us that Moshiach is coming, which won't just be a notification, but also be a form of preparation. As the Rambam writes, that the role of Eliyahu Hanavi is that Layasher Yisrael ulahachin libam, to set the Jewish people straight or upright and to prepare their hearts. Just like the role of every prophet, right? We have many prophets. Eliyahu Navi is one of the prophets. Only difference is the other prophets passed away and were buried, and Eliyahu Navi went up to heaven alive. So all the prophets, what was their role? We have a Torah. The Torah tells us what we need to do. What do we need prophets? So we need prophets to encourage us, to tell us, listen, guys, if you behave, this is what's going to happen. If you're not going to behave, that's what's going to happen. And they're coming with relevant messages from Hashem, what's about to happen, and how to make sure that these events only unfold in a good way, because our actions will be good. Similarly, Eliyahu Navi will be the one, when the time is finally ripe for Moshiach to come, he will be the one who will come and prepare us for his coming. He will tell us that Moshiach is about to come, just like any prophet would foretell the Jewish people what's going to happen, whether it was good news or the opposite, and that they should prepare themselves for it. They should be ready for it. They should behave accordingly, and that will be the general role of Eliyahu Navi. In addition, the verse says he will return the hearts of fathers on their children, and the hearts of children on their fathers. And there is various opinions amongst our sages. What exactly does this verse talk about? And it's the last in the chapter Ediyos, in the Mishnayos, in the Mishnah Ediyos, the last chapter, chapter 8, and the last Mishnah, right at the end of the chapter, discusses what is the role of Eliyahu Navi. And the Rambam says, the Mishnah actually says, Halacha l'Moshe miSinai. The Mishnah says that the coming of Eliyahu Navi is a tradition going all the way back from Moshe, our teacher from Mount Sinai. And the Rambam explains what that means is, the Torah doesn't write, the prophets speak about Eliyahu Navi. The first prophet that speaks about Eliyahu Navi is Malachi, who lived in the beginning of the Second Temple era. But the Rambam writes that Moshe, when Moshe told the Jewish people in the Torah, it's recorded that Moshe promises the Jewish people about the coming of Moshiach. So Moshe also told them that there will be certain events that will happen that will come before Moshiach, right? So one of those events that the way that Rambam puts it, that he says that Hashem will send Eliyahu Navi as to prepare the Jewish people for Mashiach's coming. So the arrival of Eliyahu Navi was already foretold by Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what our sages tell us in the Mishnah. It's a tradition that we have going back generation from generation, orally transmitted from the days of Moshe. Now, what is his role? So over here, the way that Rambam explains, Moshe didn't specify the role of Eliyahu Navi. We only know about the role of Eliyahu Navi in a general sense. We know that he will bring about a change in the world, that he will prepare them, take away all the chamosim, all the negative things. He will prepare them for the coming. He will take away all the fights or whatever negative things are in the world, and to be ready for the coming of Moshiach. Now, the question is the center, the issue that's debated over here is, first of all, what is the evil that he's coming to remove? Everybody has their own understanding of what's the worst thing. Ask them, what's the worst thing that's happening in your community, in the world? Some people might agree, there might be some things that are more important than others. Different people have different understanding of what's evil. And additionally, the verse says that he will return the hearts of fathers on their children. So we could understand that the evil that he's coming to eradicate is somehow alluded to in this verse as well. So what is this verse referring to? So in general, there's 4 opinions, but I'm not going to go into the details of every single opinion. The first 2 opinions hold that the issue that Eliyahu Navi will come is to clarify cases of proper Jewish kosher lineage, which means sometimes there's certain families that there is a halachic issue to marry, for them to intermarry into other families, and things weren't dealt with properly, and Eliyahu Navi will come to correct that. But I'm not going through the laws now of lineage and all that. It's a separate discussion. It's for rabbis to delve into. But there's sometimes certain families that we know that halachically certain Jewish people cannot marry, and people brought them in with going against the opinion of the rabbis. And then there were certain families that were kosher, but other people tried, because of whatever reasons, people didn't allow them to intermarry. So Eliyahu Navi will correct the wrongdoings that are relating to lineage, to yuchsin. This is also the meaning of the verse, the hearts of fathers on their children, right? Fathers and children is all referring to lineage. So that's the first two opinions. There's a little bit of a difference between the first two opinions of exactly what issues of lineage he will deal with. But we'll put that on the side for now. The halacha does not follow those opinions anyway. The next opinion is that his job will be lahashvei samachleikis. His job will be to take away disputes. What type of disputes? So primarily Torah disputes, halachic disputes, right? There is, according to this interpretation, fathers and children represent teachers and students. Teachers and students are often alluded to in scriptures as fathers and children. So Eliyahu Navi will take away if there's the teachers teaching students, and there's amongst the students, between the teachers and the students, I guess there isn't so much disagreement, but between the students themselves and how they understand the teacher, maybe even between the teacher and the students, there's room for debates and machloikis and disagreement. Eliyahu Navi will take away that disagreement. How will he take away that disagreement? So there is a few points over here, which I'll discuss briefly. First of all, certain matters of dispute can be resolved through being able to ascertain what the tradition is. Certain things were debated, which were already spoken about in previous generations, and they were already reconciled in previous generations, but just nobody was around that remembered what not everything was written down, not everything was communicated. So there's certain things, just lack of information. We don't know that in the previous generations, the sages already discussed this, and they came to a conclusion. And therefore, the debate, this differences of opinion has already been decided. There's certain things that, traditions that were passed all the way from Moshe that we might have lost, certain parts, certain specific laws. So Eliyahu Navi, he lived many hundreds, thousands of years ago. He has a tradition going back to the days of Moshe. He also, as I mentioned before, he still comes around to this world in one form or another. And he knows what, different sages are saying. So he will clarify all these points. There's a deeper interpretation over here, which is that Eliyahu Navi doesn't necessarily mean that he will answer every single, he will explain and resolve every single dispute by getting into the nitty-gritty discussion of every single dispute, but rather that Eliyahu Navi will reveal a level of understanding, such a broad level of understanding, of intelligence, that automatically the disputes will be resolved, and people are granted a broader intelligence, are able to understand things much deeper in a much more broader sense, so their disagreements will fall apart, because they'll realize the heart, the truth of the matter, and their disagreements won't exist anymore. Our sages say that the role of Eliyahu Navi is la'asos shalom ba'olam, to make peace in the world. And that's the way that Rambam really rules in Hilchos Malachim Perikut Beis Halacha Beis, the end of his book, towards the end of his Sefer. Says that his role will be to make peace in the world, which is understanding the verse that he will turn the hearts of fathers on their sons and the hearts of sons on their fathers, in a very literal sense, meaning that there's disputes, family politics, unfortunately, and all things like that, and there's fathers and sons which have become estranged from each other. There's a generation gap, and he will cause them to, he will bring them back together again. Similarly, a lot of times the Talmud, when there's a question that's unresolved, the Talmud would use the term teiku. Teiku, according to some, means is an acronym for the words Tishbi Yataris Kushis Yibois. Elijah the prophet, which is also referred to as Eliyahu Tishbi, will resolve these questions and these sfeikas, these doubts. But in addition to that, there's a more interesting thing in the Talmud, which it speaks about. Let's say there's a dispute, two people are arguing, we don't know, let's say two people gave somebody a pikot, and they put aside money for somebody to watch, and one guy gave 100, another guy gave 200, and each one comes back and says, I was the one that gave 200. And we don't know who's saying the truth, who's lying. So we say, this disagreement, the money should lay there. You can't, each one deserves 100,000. Everybody gave at least 100, but the third 100, the one that gave 200, we don't know who he is. So that extra $100 should stay there until Eliyahu Navi comes, or until they obviously find a way of compromise. But there's this concept of certain things that we don't know what to do. are laying there until Eliyahu Navi comes. Eliyahu Navi will come, and when he appears, he'll settle all these things that were laying around for centuries. We don't know who's right, who's wrong. He'll settle all of that. Now, why is this so important before the coming of Moshiach? We understand that Eliyahu Navi in general, it's important that Eliyahu Navi should come and tell us Moshiach is about to come, get ready, do acts of goodness and kindness, learn more Torah, whatever, resolve your disputes. We understand that we need a prophet to guide us, to teach us, particularly to prepare us for such a monumental event like the coming of Moshiach. We understand. But what is the need to have every single dispute reconciled, and how does that exactly prepare? In other words, okay, there's $100 bill. I don't know who it belongs to. Why do we need? Does this help us prepare for Mashiach? And why is this the role of Eliyahu Navi? So the point is, the Maral of Prague, famous Maral, who he wrote many Sfarim, he wrote the Sefer Netzach Yisrael on matters of exile and redemption. And chapter 53, he dedicates to discussing the concept of Eliyahu Navi. And he gives a very interesting observation. He says that when the Jewish people left Egypt, there were two brothers. It was Moshe, Moses, and Aaron, that were, so to say, the leaders of the Jewish people. Obviously, Moshe was the leader, but Aaron also had a very important role in leading the Jewish people. Their roles were very different. Moshe's role was he was the leader, he was the king, he was the teacher. Aaron's role, he was the people's person. He was a peacemaker. It says that Aaron was a oyev shalom v'roidev shalom. He loved peace and he pursued peace. When he would see two people fighting, he would go to each guy and he says, "Oh, you don't know how much your friend is so upset. He's pinching himself. Oh, I wish I could tell the person I'm sorry. I just can't bring myself to do it." Then he would go to the other guy and tell the other guy the same thing. And so the two people say, "Oh wow, my friend feels so bad. Let me go and make peace with him." And it wasn't really true necessarily that each one was bemoaning the fact that he offended his friend, but he would say that he would say that anyway. You're allowed to lie for the sake of peace, and he would bring them back together. When the husband and wife were in disagreement, he would do the same thing. He was the one making peace. Now, being a leader, teaching Torah, you understand that's the role of a leader. But what's this idea of making peace? So he basically explains that for the Jewish people to become a nation, they have to be united. Now, a unity has two facets. There's the unity that stems from the leader, right? In other words, there's a person has many limbs. What unites all the limbs is really the soul. The soul is the tzura, the spiritual level, the spiritual energy that's invested in the body is really the true thing that makes the body be seen as one entity, as one thing, not just a bunch of different limbs laying around. But in order for that is more of a spiritual unifying force. Obviously, in order for the body to be complete, he also needs that the limbs themselves on a physical level should all be, there shouldn't be any limb that's bruised or damaged. They can't work together with the body. He says that Eliyahu Navi and Mashiach will be the same way. He says in order for the Jewish people to be united, Eliyahu Navi will be the one who will deal with the Jewish people, making sure that they're all at peace with each other. It's only once you have that are you able to have the Jewish people should be ready for the ultimate unity, for the ultimate leadership of Mashiach. When you have a nation which is getting there, which is waiting for their leader, the leader obviously is going to make the nation one. He'll lead the nation. But the nation has to get ready. How do they get ready? They get ready by becoming unified with each other. When they become unified, now they could be called a entity, a nation which is at one, which is now ready for the true unity, for the true bonding that they all merge together through being connected to their leader. But if in each person's life there's a small dispute, a small family politics, right? So Mashiach will teach peace, will teach about serving Hashem, but Mashiach is not going to deal necessarily with every small little fight. That Eliyahu Navi will deal with. Before you're able to deal with the big things, you have to, before you deal with more abstract, with more pure, with more spiritual levels of peace, of knowledge of Hashem, you first have to get rid of all the little fights. You have to make sure that the Jewish people are truly united one with another. Then there'll be a proper vessel, there'll be a proper keli, a vessel of receiving the light of Moshiach. And we have this concept that's really elaborated a lot in Chassidus, the idea of, in the terminology of the Zohar, Sheshvina de Malko, Sheshvina de Matronisa, when a person comes close to godliness, there's two roles. Moshe's role was to teach Torah, to bring godliness down through teaching the Torah. Aaron, his job was to arouse the love within the Jewish person that he should want to connect to Hashem. There's two motives. There's the motives of revealing godly light, and then there's the motive of preparing the person that he should be ready for this revelation. Similarly, in the future, Eliyahu's mode will be to prepare the person, that the person should internalize. Mashiach's role will be to give light, to teach Torah. Eliyahu's role will be dealing with the person himself in his own private life, in the small little things that he's bothered with, thereby preparing the person and preparing the Jewish people as a whole, that they are now ready as a nation to receive this light. This is also connected with the role of Eliyahu Navi. As I mentioned before, as we know, he's the only prophet that went up alive to heaven. Why was he the one that went up alive to heaven? Because our sages explain he refined his body so much that he was able to go up to heaven with his body. Now, there were many great people. You have Moshe Rabbeinu, for example, was much greater than Eliyahu Navi. But Moshe didn't go up to heaven with his body. Moshe's body was buried. So Eliyahu Navi, it's explained, there's different tzaddikim that serve Hashem in different ways. Some tzaddikim, their main way of serving Hashem is through revealing the light of their soul. They don't have to focus on their body because their body automatically becomes refined through the spiritual pursuits that they have. Eliyahu Navi, his main mode of service was very different. His main mode of service was to focus with the body, to deal with the body step by step, to try to refine it, start from the bottom up. So therefore, by him, maybe his soul wasn't so great, but his body became refined because his focus was not on revealing godly light through the medium of the soul, but to focus on the body as the body is in of itself. Therefore, when Mashiach comes as well, the one that will give us the ability, the perspective, the ability to internalize and to take the wonderful light of Mashiach and to apply it to ourselves, to our body, to our physical thing in the physical interactions with the world, will be Eliyahu Navi. Hashem should help. We should merit to have the coming of Mashiach, and we should do our preparation. Even before we see Eliyahu Navi in a physical sense, we still have a huge job of preparing ourselves to the coming of Mashiach, and we should merit this coming of Mashiach speedily and quickly in our days. Amen.